They said the house was empty. No lights, no neighbors, no reason anyone should be inside. But at dusk, over a tidal marsh, something else found its voice. Tonight, listen like the land is listening back.
Find somewhere dark and quiet. Put your headphones on and listen like you're the one in the story. Tonight's story is called The Crow's Refrain. I'm Samnang. Let's begin.
It was low tide, and the marsh smelled of salt and old iron. The town sits like a bruise along the estuary, split wood docks, a diner that closes at 9, and houses that lean away from the wind. Our missing person, Mara Holden, lived 3 streets back from the water. She taught middle school science, mended her neighbor's fence, and volunteered with the local search and rescue team on Saturday mornings. She liked cheap binoculars and thermoses that kept coffee hot through tide shifts. People in her circle used the same words about her: steady, careful, quietly curious. She had the kind of habits that made her easy to miss when she vanished, because she didn't make headlines, she made schedules. That Saturday, Mara went out at dusk to check a report of an injured shorebird near Shipwright Marsh. She never came home.
The first night the crows did it, the search team thought it was a trick of memory. They were marsh-tired, cold, wet feet, furiously replaying maps and cell pings. A recorder on a pole picked up them calling, and one of the searchers, Elena, swore she heard her sister's voice in the chorus. She froze by the mud and said aloud what she'd heard. "Tell Mom I left at dawn." The recording, when they played it back, was clear. Not a human voice carrying, an odd clipped mimicry layered over wing beats. The sentence that Elena had no reason to have whispered into the night came from the black circle of birds perched on the dead grass. "Tell Mom I left at dawn."
At first, the town explained it away. Crows are clever. They mimic. They steal lines from radios. The recorder could be contaminated. People told the searchers what they wanted to hear, that it was animal noise and nothing more. But then the pattern began to build. Small things, repeated at dusk, like a needle skipping the same groove. One phrase, then another, then a cadence of words that felt like remembering. They logged timestamps. 6:12 p.m., 2 syllables, low and hollow. 6:18 p.m., a name, Mara, split into clicks between wing beats. 6:24 p.m., coordinates, not exact numbers, but a string of rhythm that matched the map of a creek bend. A volunteer with a sound editing background pulled the waveforms up on a laptop and circled identical patterns, the same staccato shape repeating at each sunset. Locals told stories. An old fisherwoman swore her grandfather used to say, "The birds keep what the mud forgets." Another kept a ledger of old drownings and whispered that the crows there had always been different, sharp, watchful, like a community archivist that never slept. The town's folklore and the search logs began to overlay, and the comfortable explanations thinned.
And then recordings started saying things the missing person had never said publicly. A field mic captured a voice, thin, breathy, as if from the throat of someone shivering, saying, "If you follow the Black Creek, you don't follow the boots, you follow the sound." Mara's friend Jordan listened and swore she would never have put those exact words together. Bettine played it for Mara's sister. She shook her head. "Mara hated when people used riddles," she said. "That wasn't her." Still, the birds repeated it at dusk like a chorus rehearsing a line. That was the turning point, the night the searchers stopped hoping this was just mimicry and started to treat the birds as a clue.
We need to be clear here. This is not a claim that crows are conspirators or that they speak with human intention. The episode threads folklore, witness testimony, and field evidence. I spoke with an ornithologist who explained how corvids can learn and imitate complex sounds, how they catalog neighbors with startling accuracy. I also sat with local elders who described a different way of listening, where animals remembered in patterns, not in sentences. Both perspectives are true in their terms. The danger came when people stopped listening critically and started following. The searcher who went missing after that night, Tom Reyes, wasn't reckless. He chose to follow a repeated phrase toward a mudflat at low tide. He told teammates he could map the birds like a constellation. That evening, he left a note. "I can hear them clearly. They want me to go where the water keeps its secrets."
The pursuit into the marsh is where the story tightens. Imagine it. Knee-deep mud tugging at boots. The sky a bruised sheet as the sun slid away. The crows moved above like a black halo, calling in broken syllables that matched the pulse of their feet on the boardwalk. Tom followed a curving channel that the birds kept marking, first with a scatter of phrases, then a rhythm that sounded almost like a human breath. At one point, he radioed in, voice clipped. "I see fabric. Dark up ahead. Maybe a bag." Then static. He called again, and it was farther away, confused. The chorus swelled. Something flashed under the water, a scrap of clothing, a strap. The sound on his last recording is ragged. There's a line where his breath collapses into a short, wordless sound, and over it, the crows fill the space with an almost human syllable. Listen, listen, listen.
The climax isn't a tidy reveal. What the team pulled from the water that night were fragments, cloth, a boot sole with a search team name stamped inside, and a small recorder that had been set to capture the birds. The recorder's last minutes are the hardest to parse. They contain overlapping calls and a high-pitched loop that researchers later labeled as patterned mimicry. In lost places, you expect either closure or emptiness. Here, you find a blurred line, evidence that could mean someone drowned, or someone staged the scene, or the birds were echoing sounds they once overheard. The coroner found no direct sign of foul play on the recovered items. The case file closed without a conclusion because there was no body and no single provable perpetrator. But the crows kept calling at dusk, and their phrases kept matching pieces of conversation that had been had in the town, some private, some public.
Aftermath landed like a low tide. You could see what was left and wonder what had gone with the water. Families rearranged schedules around dusk. The Search Association updated protocols. Never follow wildlife cues alone. Always use a buddy and GPS. Never rely on anecdote. The town held a candlelight vigil where someone left a feather on a post. The ornithologist I spoke with sent me spectrograms and cautioned that even excellent audio analysis can be interpreted in multiple ways. Patterns can look purposeful when humans expect a message. A folklorist thanked the town for sharing stories and reminded me that myths often arise from grief as a way to keep someone present. I want you to hear those two truths together. Science explains mechanisms. Folklorist explains why we keep listening. Together, they shape the way a town reacts when its people vanish into the marsh.
Before I found this story, a local librarian emailed me a line from a notebook. At dusk, the crows come down to speak the missing. She sent a photo of Mara's volunteer badge tucked between pages. I reached out to the family, and they were patient and careful with what they shared. This episode leans on interviews, public searches, and field recordings that volunteers made available. We include folklore and hypothesis, not a single claim that the birds intended harm. If you take one practical thing from this, don't go into dangerous terrain alone because a pattern comforts you. Nature is not a map you can read by desire. It remembers in ways we can't always understand, and sometimes that memory is the only trace left behind.
One last image. Months later, when the marsh had grown green and the town tried to settle back, a single crow landed on a fence post near the diner. It looked at the road as if listening for a voice. Then, almost softly,
It repeated one small, private word that had belonged to Mara's mother. The word hung in the air, and then the bird fell silent, as if it had said its piece and was waiting. That silence is the thing that kept people from sleeping.
If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who listens in the dark. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, check the corners. If you're still here, it means the story followed you all the way to the end. Take a breath. Look around your room. Make sure everything is exactly where you left it. I'm Samnang. Good night.